I said to my partner, I said, do you want to take a quick picture just to obviously remember the performance? We took 2 pictures. He left the dressing room and I cried for like 30 minutes right after the curtain. I literally, the whole experience just was like shot.
Welcome back, every Bendy Body, to the Bendy Bodies podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Bluestein, the Hypermobility MD, a Mayo Clinic-trained physician here to help you understand connective tissue disorders and live your best Bendy life. I'm thrilled to be joined today by my friend and Bendy Bodies OG co-host, Jennifer Milner, former professional ballet dancer and expert in training hypermobile movers. If you haven't yet, be sure to check out our recent conversation, Dancing Stronger, Smarter Training for Bendy Bodies with Jennifer Milner, episode 165. It's packed with practical, dancer-tested wisdom. And today we have a truly special guest, Skylar Brandt, principal dancer with American Ballet Theatre. She began ballet at age 6 at Scarsdale Ballet School and later trained at the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis School of American Ballet Theatre. A 2-time silver medalist at YAGP, she joined ABT2 in 2009, became an apprentice in 2010, entered the Corps de Ballet in 2011, rose to soloist in 2015, and then was promoted to principal in 2020. Her accolades include a 2013 Princess Grace Foundation USA Dance Fellowship, a feature in Ballet's Greatest Hits, a special jury award on Russia's Big Ballet, and recognition on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2022. We are excited about this conversation because on Bendy Bodies, we love talking with dancers. They embody the relationship between movement, resilience, and body awareness that so many people with connective tissue disorders can relate to. Dancers live in bodies that push the limits of human movement, bending, stretching, and sustaining extraordinary precision under pressure. Research shows that up to 90% of professional dancers meet criteria for generalized joint hypermobility compared to about 20% of the general population. But not every dancer is hypermobile, and even those who aren't face the constant task of mastering control, alignment, and recovery in an art form that demands perfection from head to toe. Today's guest, Skylar Brandt, exemplifies that balance, combining discipline, artistry, and intelligent training to sustain a long, healthy career. We'll explore her work ethic, recovery mindset, and what the dance world can teach all of us, hypermobile or not, about strength, adaptability, and longevity. As always, this information is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personalized medical advice. Stick around until the very end so you don't miss any of our special hypermobility hacks. Here we go. Okay, we are here with Skylar Brandt, and I can't tell you, Skylar, how excited I am to chat with you.
Thank you. Likewise. I'm so happy that you're having me on.
Oh, wonderful. And I'm so happy that Jen Milner is here, OG co-host for Bendy Bodies. And I think, Jen, you're going to start with the questions, right?
I am. We have a lot we want to ask you about today, so let's just go ahead and dig in. So you are part of the first generation of ballet stars to grow up with the international youth competitions and the sort of ever-present social media. So we would love to hear how this has sort of shaped you as a young dancer and how you use it now to both mentor the next generation and also to inform your own career.
Yes, I feel like, social media is such a tricky thing because we can use it as a great tool from which to learn. Back when YouTube was the thing, I was constantly watching videos of Adeline Pastor and various stars that I wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to see if it were not for the internet. Daniil Simkin got his start on the internet. It really opened my whole world to the possibilities of what you could do in classical ballet. And so I was really grateful for that. But I think that, social media has that tendency to shift to the less than ideal side, which could include people kind of portraying parts of their lives that are not totally truthful or it's like the internet is kind of like the Wild West. You can find all kinds of things, whether you're looking for them or not. Everything's driven by an algorithm. But I think, it's like I can see how social media is so necessary to have, especially as an artist, a performer, it's like one of the only ways that I can communicate to people when I'm going to be on stage. Also, it's a way that I can kind of share with the world my own process, which I think can be really helpful, especially for young people. But then it's also really easy to see those dancers online who might film something over and over and over again just to get the perfect shot of their 10 pirouettes or their perfect balance, or which is awesome. It's not like there's anything wrong with that. I mean, it's probably kind of assumed that that's what's going on anyway, but I think it could put emphasis maybe sometimes on the wrong things for young dancers, and it can help. It can start to take away from artistry and focus on technical capabilities. And I think it's all important. It's just we need to be really mindful of what we're seeing and what we're watching. And so that's why personally I like to share my process. And even though it's still curated, I'm not necessarily posting my worst take. I'm also showing my journey through preparing a role by showing several different takes over maybe the course of a couple months. So that's kind of how I like to share on social media.
Well, and I think that you are very inspiring on social media. I still remember, and I'm sure everybody remembers your, Sleeping Beauty promenade and your
Yes,
attitude.
that I can say took me like 3 weeks to do. I was practicing that every day. And also we have to remember it was the pandemic, so nothing else was going on. It was all I had to do in my day was learn how to promenade on point. So, again, everything with a grain of salt. It's not like I'd ever want to try to do that in an actual performance. I couldn't. But but yes, I was working really hard. That was a lot of trial and error and a lot of different takes over and over again on the
Which
phone.
you were also very honest about, right? You weren't like, "Oh, look what I just happened to do one day while I was
Yeah.
warming up," right?
It was easy. Yeah, no,
It was
it
so easy.
wasn't.
I didn't work on it at all. Well,
Right.
something else that you have been really honest about is sort of um, you said you consider yourself to have a lack of hypermobility, which, we have seen a growth of on social media, sort of encouraging hypermobility in those looks. So, as a young and aspiring dancer, did you wish that you were more flexible? And what was it like, sort of growing up in this culture as someone who isn't as bendy? Have you felt that pressure to push your body beyond what's healthy for the sake of aesthetics?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because sometimes I'll be having a conversation with someone who's not a dancer, and I'll say, "Yeah, I'm actually not that flexible." And they all laugh at me like, "What are you great? Like that's the most
Right.
ridiculous thing I've ever heard." And I'm like, "No, no, I understand. I'm flexible, but I'm not as flexible as many people are in the ballet world." I was like, for example, if someone's like leg goes behind their ear, mine goes to, my shoulder. Like that's the difference that I'm talking about. I'm not, I have a lack of flexibility in many parts of my body. Like my legs don't go as high. My feet are not as bendy, just certain things structurally that I just don't have, and maybe other people are blessed with. And as a kid, it was so difficult to contend with it because you're looking around at your peers, at your classmates, and you're like, oh my God, I'm doing all this stuff at home. I'm trying to stretch, but I just don't have that space. My hips just don't open up that way or what have you. My feet are just, the bones are the way that they are. And no matter how much I'm jamming them under the piano or the couch, which also like, ow, that, can create a whole other slew of issues. My feet are not necessarily going to be as banana-y as someone else's. So it was something that I think I was frustrated about because I knew there was a limitation as to how much I could change the way my body was the way I was born. But then as I got older, I actually realized that that my lack of hypermobility also protected my body in ways. Like I was less prone to injuries. Um, Perhaps I could move faster than some people because I had tighter muscles, more like of that fast twitch reaction. But I also could see that, whether somebody's leg is here or here, of course, there's there's a difference in the beauty and the aesthetic, but it's also, again, not what's most important. And so I think that falls into line with, again, the things we see on social media, which could be somebody doing 20 pirouettes, which is astounding. But maybe the next person is doing 25 pirouettes, and it's like, okay, it's the difference of 5 pirouettes. Same way, it might be a difference of 5 degrees in the height of the leg, but what's important is what moves you emotionally, not necessarily that kind of technical stuff. So I feel like I grew to appreciate my body and my body's limitations more when I got older and could see the benefits that it actually provided me later on.
I love that. And that you could see that hopefully at an earlier age too. I think a lot of young dancers struggle with that and struggle with what's the assumption. And in my work with pre-professional dancers, I always say, but that's not your job, is to be the next Skylar Brandt. Your job is to be you and show the world what you have to offer. Speaking of that, you've been pretty honest about your feet and sort of the work that you've had to do with your feet. And you've talked about wearing farches and all of that, saying your feet aren't quite as fancy. So tell us a little bit more about your feet and ankles. And also, by the way, I love that you talk honestly about it. And also that, you chose to wear farches, the fake arches, rather than, break your feet in half under the piano.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. I think, I also, first of all, I feel open about talking about it because I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of, the fact that my feet are not as arched as the next person. I'm like, I don't know how many times it's happened to you, but sometimes like I'll be at the beach and I'll see somebody with like just the most gorgeous feet. And you're like, why were they never a dancer? So
Right.
it just goes to show that you can be born with feet like that. And it's not that people who are born with those feet don't also work hard at their feet and strengthening them. And obviously that comes with its own set of issues. Maybe the same way that I said, my limitation in my hypermobility actually helps me to have strength when I'm performing certain things, like hops on point are quite easy for me because my feet are naturally a little bit more ginched than maybe the person who has uber flexible feet. And there's less strength in the tendons, easier for them to maybe roll their ankles. Like it's a little more dangerous. But they may not have had to do as much. They don't have to break their feet under the piano in order to accomplish a beautiful line. And so that's also, there's nothing wrong with either thing. And I think that's why I like to be open about it. Obviously, ballet is an aesthetic art form. So if it's more pleasing to see a more arched foot at the end of a line, then why not put some padding on my feet, just in the same way people put padding in other places of their bodies, or wear Spanx to thin out their, whatever the case might be. It's like, it's an option. So why not? It's not that I don't work hard. I have a limitation as to how far my feet can go. And I did, as a kid, try to stretch my feet, and it kind of definitely put stress on my Achilles and on my ankles and made me feel jammed. And I was just like, oh, well, I think this is the only way. It was like killing me that my feet weren't just not flexible. And then I'll never forget joining ABT2, the studio company now. And the first day on my first day of work at my new professional job in ABT's junior company, the director came up to me and he said, have you ever tried arch enhancers? And I was just like, okay, that's your that's your way to say, hey, go out and buy a pair of arch enhancers.
Right.
So I was like, okay, great, I'll go. And I got a bunch of different kinds and I tried them, and they helped. And they also helped with my confidence because I was no longer stressing as hard. To be fair, I was only wearing the fake arches for performances. So in class and in rehearsal, I was still working on my feet, not just trying to find the quick fix. I was still trying to make my line as best as I could in those moments. But I was also then gave myself a little bit extra for the performances. What I will say, an interesting new discovery is that I found that my one foot is better than the other. My left foot is not as flexible. And I also have more of a hyperextended knee on my left leg. So it's interesting because when I stretch my knee and I point my foot really hard, it's almost does this thing where it makes my foot look even more flexed. So, and it puts a lot of like to point so hard against how hard I'm stretching my knee caused me to have a buildup of fluid in my ankle, on the outside of my ankle. And I was like, "Ow, this is really painful." And it was something I just couldn't get to the bottom of. And it turned out it was an overuse kind of injury. And I worked with a teacher, actually, Isabelle Guerin, who's Paris Opera trained. And she said to me, don't stretch your knee that hard. When you overstretch your knee, it almost it gives your foot at the end of the line a worse angle. She's like, stretch your knee or pull up your kneecap, but don't overstretch. And it was amazing because after a little while of doing this, I was not only no longer tensing my quads and like making my leg line rigid, but it was also allowing my foot to point more easily without having to work against the strength of my calf being as most engaged as it was. So it not only made my line look better to slightly bend my knee. To me, it feels like bent. It doesn't look bent. It's just not overly stretched where it's going in the opposite direction. And it also helped to alleviate pressure on my ankle and actually allow my foot to fold more over my Achilles, as opposed to having this Achilles engage so much that my foot couldn't get past it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if any of that makes sense, but it was this great new discovery of, going from being a perfect student, stretching my knees, pointing my feet as hard as I can, to actually relaxing my body so that my bones could stack up, could line up in a slightly different way and look more beautiful and use less energy and tension.
Well, and I think it's also an excellent example of realizing you don't have to try to achieve a certain look. What we're doing is the process. And if you are dancing correctly, then you have this great line and this great look, rather than what do I have to do to my body to get this look that for you was artificial. You don't have super hyperextended knees, so why should you be pushing into it and being able to relax into it? That's a great example. Thank you.
I love that. I don't know if you've heard of Bonnie Southgate Moore. Jennifer and I interviewed her for the podcast, and she actually is doing like her PhD or master's or something, literally in what you just said. The more you hyperextend your knee, the more you have to have ankle range of motion in order to get like over your point shoe. And
Yes.
so exactly what you just said. So that's really fascinating. And you're right. There are actual medical conditions like metatarsus adductus, which we also talked about on this podcast with a podiatrist. And I have a family member who has this, and they have gorgeous arches. Gorgeous. Not a dancer, gorgeous arches, but it comes with all kinds of complications and all kinds of other problems. So the ankle and the foot are of course, both related when it comes to being on point. And, dancing with the body that you have is such a great message that you're giving us here. I think that's so, so important for especially young dancers to hear, but working with the body that we have is important for everyone, whether they're a dancer or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about injuries. Have you had to deal much with injuries? You've kind of mentioned that a little bit briefly earlier, but how have you managed in that regard?
Yeah, so I love to tell this story because I think it's important to hear, especially for dancers that love to persevere and are so good at pushing through pain. And we're so tough. We're so hardworking. It's hard to keep us out of the studios. We want to progress. We have this hunger for physical activity, but sometimes we need to listen to our bodies. And my story is that I remember after rehearsal, I felt like my back got sore, my lower back. So for like a couple weeks, I was just stretching it. I was just constantly stretching it. And it was like a dull ache that just wasn't going away no matter what I was doing. And then one morning I woke up and I couldn't even lower my chin without feeling a zing from the base of my spine to the top of my head. So, and I'm a person who has not generally been injured in my whole time dancing, from student to professional. Again, I think thanks to my slightly tighter body, everything is in good working order. But so now I'm getting ready to go to work, like completely ignoring the fact that my body's like, hey, you're in pain. Maybe you should stop.
Don't go.
Maybe you should not go to work. And even just putting on my socks and shoes, like to bend down, it was a sensation I'd never ever had before in my whole life. So I go to work. Now I'm in the dressing room and I'm putting on tight clothes, which when you are feeling this kind of pain is horrible. Like trying to even pull tights up was so excruciating. And now I'm going to class and I'm stretching before class as best as I can. And I start doing, plies and tendus. And then I realize, nope, this isn't happening. Like there's no way. So I go to PT. Everybody looks at me like this when I walk into the PT room because I'm never in PT. I never even have normal aches and pains, which is, I feel so lucky about. But so everybody's like, oh my God, what are you doing in here? And I was like, well, I can't even like lower my head without feeling an enormous amount of pain. So the physical therapist who has known me for years, even though I'm not in there, I think she was like, oh, this must be serious. So she kind of tested me and then she was like, I think you need to see the doctor today, and get an MRI. So I said, great. So I go to get up off of the table. I think I had been laying down and engaging my muscles to stand back up. My whole back seized to the point where it made me lightheaded. Like I almost felt like I was going to fall down. And I remember calling my mom and saying, Mom, you have to come pick me up in a cab. I have to go to the doctor. I don't, something's wrong. Turns out I had a herniated disc in my lumbar spine, which is actually not uncommon. Even for non-dancers, people live with herniations and they don't even know they have them. But turns out I had a herniated disc. And it put me out, actually really not for very long, but I learned the hard way that to not ignore a signal from my body. Like if I'm in pain, I should have stopped and not pushed through. And because it's so short-sighted when we as dancers decide, oh, we're just going to push through something, and then it becomes a worse, more chronic injury. So, this is something that still every day or every week to this day, I'm still going to Pilates, like the same teacher who helped me to rehab my back. I've continued with her, even though it's been years and years and years since I've felt any back pain at all. It's like I forget I even ever had this injury. But now I'm like, okay, the importance of cross training, the importance of, having consistency for my body. I also am a firm believer in getting body work done, be that massage or acupuncture or chiropractic or whatever it is that works for any given person. It's like so tough because as ballet dancers, we already are not making the same amount of money as, let's say, your basketball player who has a whole team to support him,
Right.
let's say. But the investment in ourselves is so important. So I'm spending money, which fortunately I have money to spend as a principal dancer. I'm making a salary that allows me to invest in myself and in my health to keep me on stage. But, it was such a great lesson. It's like that thing of saying, well, you come out of an injury stronger. It was true, both physically, but also um, in intelligence about my body, awareness about my body. And now I'll never ignore a warning sign from my body again.
That's such a great lesson because I think, especially ballet, there's pain. There's pain with point shoes and, obviously sore muscles and so many things that we do that are painful. So distinguishing.
It's normal. Yeah.
It's normal. So then you're, trying to sort out, is this a good pain or a bad pain? Or is this a pain associated with something getting stronger or making some kind of progress? Or is this something that I really need to do something about? And of course, in dance too, most injuries are overuse injuries. They're not sudden, acute. I mean, if you do a grand jeté and you land and you immediately twist your ankle, like okay, I just had a big injury. But otherwise, I feel like, most people, the statistics also bear this out, that the injuries just kind of creep up, right? So it makes it harder to know, well, when do I change something about this?
Yeah. And I will say I remember as a teenager, a young teenager, I was also experiencing some kinds of like back soreness. And I went to Dr. Hamilton, who was a big dance doctor at the time. And I said, this is what's going on. And he said, oh, I think it's your growth plates. Like I was growing and it was putting stress on my body. And I said, okay, well, how do I proceed from here? Like, do I need to stop dancing and he gave me, again, like one of the best pieces of information that I've remembered since that day. And he said to me, just don't do anything that hurts it. And it was like so obvious. Okay. But it wasn't all of a sudden now like, oh my God, I have to stop dancing entirely. It was like, no, if you're having a pain, but it just hurts to do a bend forward or a jump, landing from a jump, just don't do those things. So it was like liberating because I thought, okay, great, I can continue and not feel like I'm losing out on time. As long as I'm just not doing the things that continue to aggravate it, it can heal while I get other stuff accomplished.
It's so interesting that you said that because I hurt my knee a number of years ago. I tore a bunch of things in my knee mountain biking, which was a very bad choice to try to do. And one of my orthopedic colleagues who had looked at my MRI was, he was kind of like helping me on the side. This was a big mistake. I should have gone in for a formal appointment, but instead, he calls me and he says, kind of jokingly, no surgery for you. And then I said, well, what do I do then? And he said, just don't do anything that hurts. And he didn't really emphasize that I had a bone bruise and I had all these other torn things, but I didn't have a torn ACL. So it was not surgical. And when he said, don't do anything that hurts, it was like, but everything hurts. So that was like, so it's great that you're sharing that because, in some cases, probably there will be certain things that you can do. So it's like relative rest, right? I'm sure, Jen, you talk to people about this all the time.
Yep.
Doing relative rest versus another type of injury where maybe, this was an acute injury that, everything hurt, but I didn't listen to my body. So I was, I had yet to learn after. Yeah. As we often do. So in terms of long dance careers, what do you think are the most crucial ingredients for that?
I think you mean physically, just like being able to sustain.
Physically or mentally, actually.
Yeah, and mentally. I mean, of course, having any kind of strong support system is important. But physically, I think, again, it's that thing of listening to your body, investing in your body, but also being open and very observant. I think like it's funny how when I was in my 20s, it was like my colleagues would say to me, oh my God, just wait till you're in your 30s. Like everything starts to hurt and like you wake up you feel so stiff and stuff. And I'm like, but you're 30. Like I just don't, it's still so young. I mean, it is young, but it is now that I'm into my 30s, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it is takes a little longer for my body to wake up in the morning or what have you. And I think that I have continued to feel good because even though I'm older and might have more of my own limitations, what I also have is more knowledge of my craft. So my technique has gotten better over time because I've spent longer doing the thing that I am doing professionally. And so even though I could be like your body's aging, I'm also a lot smarter about how I'm working. And making these small discoveries that make such a huge difference, like not hyperextending my knee, which of course in school, your teacher's going to say, stretch your knees. And as a student, you're going to stretch your knees because it's academic. But then you're like, oh, as a professional, you say, wait a second, I don't need to for my knee to go backwards. It can still be stretched and look look just as well, or if not better. And so it's like interesting because I think in a way you can have a long career the longer you spend in the career because you just get smarter and wiser and more attuned to what you need to do. Also, I think when you're younger, you still have this approach of needing to prove yourself, which is the unfortunate truth that comes along with probably any industry. It's like when you're young and new, you need to make a statement, you need to make an impact, you need to prove to whoever's making a choice about your career why you deserve to be where you want to go. And so you push yourself harder. And I think that, again, the older you get and the more trust there is and the more people know who you are, it's like you don't have, you earn the ability to take things more easily when you really need to, so on and so forth. It's kind of like that trickle down effect. So in a way, I think age can help with the longevity of your career.
Well, and I think you get there by understanding who you are and having that authenticity from as early of an age as possible. I mean, when you look at the people who have had longer careers like Wendy Whelan and Sylvie Guillaume, they both have very authentic personalities on stage. Trying to think of a way to put it that non-dancers would understand as well. So you get a sense of who they are as a person from watching them dance, and they're not trying to fit into a specific type. They understand what they do well, and they are very strong in that. I think that you're another person like that. We definitely know who you are when we watch you dance, and I think that shows the maturity of being in it for a while, but also the understanding of who you are as a human and what you have to bring to it, and being smart about how you bring that to it. I know Sylvie, she was kind of the OG Bendy body. And she lasted until her mid-50s performing, and people were like, there was no one Bendy before her. And I'm like, well, there was, but they didn't know how to take care of their bodies, so they didn't make it to 54. And she knew how to take care of herself, and she knew what to do every day. And you're the same way. You post a lot of your videos of busting your butt to get ready for Giselle. And it's not just in the dance studio, it's doing those box jumps, and it's doing all the crazy stuff on the trampoline and everything. And I love that you show that, so people understand there's more to doing the entrecots and Giselle than just practicing the entrecots over and over again.
Yeah. And I think it's so true what you're saying about each person being an individual. Like maybe for me, maybe box jumps work for me, but not for somebody else. And I think that also, again, when you're young, you're like, oh, well, if she's doing it, then that's probably the thing to do. But it's not necessarily true. It's like there's so many different ways to get around to the same goals. People need to have enough faith in themselves and trust in themselves and confidence to make their own decisions and not just follow the crowd, which is, again, easy to do because as young people, we're very easily influenced and we have less confidence.
And you alluded to this earlier about the range of joint hypermobility amongst dancers, even amongst the same rank within the same company, right? Some dancers are going to be much more hypermobile than others. Have you noticed anything along the lines of like strengths, vulnerabilities, injury patterns, anything like that, as it might pertain to hypermobility?
Yes, I think so. I think people, the people who are seemingly get maybe more injured have, again, that it's like that range. Their bodies don't stop at a certain point. So they could just either go over their ankle or, it's actually interesting because there's a dancer who she injured her foot because it was on some sort of like slide, or it was I think it was a partnered thing, but her foot just kind of like bent, just continued to bend, and then it strained ligaments and stuff. And then I had, during the same season, a move where it was a partnered move where I was sliding my feet and then had to go up and over. And it went a little too far, but instead of my foot going with the shoe, my foot just came out of my point shoe. Like, I was like, oh my God, thank God my feet are not just, they stop somewhere. So the point shoe kept going, but my foot just came out of the shoe. And then I was like walking around with, I needed to take my shoe off and put my foot back in the shoe. But maybe if I had had that other person's feet, my foot would have gone with the action that ended up, causing an injury. So I do see it.
Yeah, and as we have talked about so frequently, I love, Jen, that you're pointing out Sophie Guillaume because, being one of the absolute, OG bendy bodies, why you're hypermobile in the first place makes all the difference in the world. So I know some people have said, oh, well, professional dancers couldn't possibly have a connective tissue disorder like Ehlers-Danlos. I've worked with quite a few former professional ballet dancers that have been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, which is a form of connective tissue disorder. So, sometimes that same thing that is such an incredible blessing and allows you to do such incredible things, can also predispose you to injury and everything. But you can't tell by looking at somebody. I've seen people say, watching the Olympics, for example, and they'll say, "Oh, that person clearly has EDS." And it's like you can't tell by looking at somebody, what they have. So we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about what advice you would like to give to younger dancers and what we want dancers to know about using social media, et cetera, and keeping their bodies safe and healthy. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. I'm super excited to tell you about the Bendy Bodies Boutique. I am so proud of our fierce styles and flexible designs. These are created by hypermobile artists for hypermobile shoppers. There are so many fun items from clothing, accessories, home goods, and my favorite are the bags. I especially love the Weekender tote with one of the EDS Tough designs. Whether you're shopping for yourself or someone you love, there's so many options to choose from. A portion of the proceeds goes to support EDS nonprofit organizations. For more information, please visit bendybodiesboutique.com. Thank you so much for listening to Bendy Bodies. We really appreciate your support. It really helps the podcast when you like, subscribe, and comment on YouTube and follow, rate, and review on all audio platforms. This helps us reach so many more people and spread the information to everyone. Thank you so much again, and enjoy the rest of the episode.
All right, and we are back having a conversation with Skylar Brandt. Skylar, we have talked a bit earlier about social media and about you growing up in the age of social media and how it sort of affected you. We've covered a fair amount of that, but I would love to know, do you think that there are any trends like the hyperextension, the extreme flexibility, the social media aesthetics, or the social media perfection that concern you as a professional, and how would you speak about that to younger dancers?
Yeah, I think, every dancer, especially once they go from student to professional, and you end up finding yourself more as an artist. Because again, things, even in school, we obviously take class every day and we practice different styles, techniques. Maybe we take character class, jazz class, what have you. But as students, we're not on stage as much as a professional dancer. And then maybe when we are on stage or doing a competition, or, you're not doing a full length ballet yet, you're executing a variation, or I think probably the most artistic someone might feel as a young person is in the Nutcracker, when you're playing a party kid, or you're playing the Rat King, or the Sugar Plum Fairy. Then, all of a sudden you're immersed in a world that allows you to find your voice, your individuality and your expression. So I think, I'm not necessarily worried about young people eventually finding themselves. What I will say is my perspective from social media, because I'm also learning from it, is there was something actually kind of liberating about seeing people's abilities, even if, again, they were students. Like most of these people that I see who are doing crazy things are students. It could be the girl doing 20 pirouettes, the girl who, is lifting her legs around her head. And what it did for me is it actually weirdly took a weight off of my shoulders, because I said to myself, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do that. Like, I thought I was doing well when I did 6 pirouettes in my living room, but this person's doing twice as many or 3 times as many. So, it's not going to be possible for me, or at least I'm not going to spend my time in the studio figuring out how to do that. Even though it's spectacular, I don't think it's something I'll be able to ever do. So I should really just focus on what makes this an art form, and it's not that I don't want to discount how spectacular it is to go to the theater and in a live show watch someone pull into 6 or 7 or 8 pirouettes. It is amazing, but it's fleeting. And what I feel is so important to focus on is what is the part of the art form and the craft that stays with you for days. So I think, and I don't think that that's going to be the height of the leg or the height of the jump or as spectacular as it is. I think it's, at the end of the day, it's how you make people feel with emotionally.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I I see so much on Instagram of those spectacular, pyrotechnic instances, which are breathtaking, and
They are.
I'll have my dancers come in with their Instagram and be like, look what Marianella posted. Look at this amazing pirouette she did. And I'm like, but look at how she got out of the pirouette. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's so much harder. And
Yeah.
and I tell my dancers all the time, the difference for me between a pre-professional and a professional dancer is the transitions. That's what really speaks um, to you being able to be in a company and start figuring out your artistry. So I love that you saw that at an early age and said, okay, that's not going to be me, rather than going, well, I'm never going to be a dancer then. And giving up, you said, okay, this frees me up to pursue the other stuff, which I can be
Yeah.
really good at. And I can find that artistry and figure out who I am. I love that. And you also continue coaching, and you've posted some videos of yourself coaching and getting, as you said, privates with some pretty famous coaches. And I think that's really important as well for people to see that just because you become, just you make it into ABT studio company and then you think, oh, well, I've got a career now, I can stop training, right? You make it into ABT, you make it as a soloist, you make it as a principal. Okay, I'm done. That's not true. As you said, you continue coaching it. And I don't think like Water for Chocolate could have been done by you as a 20-year-old the same way that it's being done now. Like there's so much that you bring to the table because you continue to learn and grow. So I appreciate you sharing that with our audience about seeing that and diving deep into it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, we're forever students, and I'm so grateful for my coaches, Irina Dvorovenko and Maxime Balatsarkovsky, who were both principals at ABT. So they did the same rep that I am doing now, which is just amazing to be able to pull from their experiences and their wisdom, their knowledge. Um, they are so intuitive and so helpful. And honestly, I think because I started with them, all of a sudden there are so many dancers at ABT who are now working with them. So it makes me happy because they deserve the recognition that they have, and they're really and they're working with so many different people, yet they're not trying to make us all the same, which I think is also a really beautiful um, quality about them as teachers. It's the most important one, I think, which is to find what works for every person, knowing that we're all different, and that if we were all told to do the same thing, there would be no reason to come back and see Swan Lake 8 different times in 1 week if we were all from a cookie jar. So yeah, it's been, and I think even as a principal, it's interesting. I remember speaking to Susan Jaffe, who's the director of American Ballet Theatre. I asked her, I think I was taking a private lesson with her when I was like 15 or 16 years old. So this was years ago. And I said to her, oh my gosh, you must have been so nervous. Like when you got your first your first soloist or principal roles. Cause of course I was dreaming, oh my God, it's going to be like, I really want to do those things, but it's so scary to even think about getting your first opportunities. And she said, actually it was the opposite. She said, when I got my first opportunities, there were no expectations. No one knew who I was. She said, but then as I built my career and I became a principal dancer, there was a certain level of expectation that people had every time they came to the theater to see me. So the pressure actually grew and got to be more so the more famous she became and the more experience she had on stage. And so I think for those reasons, I think that's true. There's a lot of pressure that comes with, let's say, being a principal dancer. You're all of a sudden, you have a huge responsibility to, you know, carry the performance. And so you have to keep working at it to maintain the level, your own level, and surpass it if you can.
Absolutely. And you've spoken a lot about sort of this non-cookie cutter approach to ballet, and that it can't be a one size fits all. So sort of summarizing that up a little bit, what do you think the dance world gets right and wrong about the whole, first of all, the beautiful lines, and how can we take what we've been talking about it and use it to pass it down to the next generation? Like, what can the ballet world in general do?
I think there's absolutely nothing. I think it's actually very necessary to, in school, especially those formative years, build that super strong base, that technique, okay, this is what the textbook says. Stretch your knees, point your feet, blah, 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 blah. Get your leg as high as possible. I think that's all really important because it's the foundation for what comes after. But what I wish I had perhaps known as a kid is you don't have to stress about it that much. You need to know it, you need to learn it, but later you will break it, you will literally tear it all down. And that's not something that I knew as a kid. I mean, what teacher is going to say, do all the things I'm telling you, but just know that in 20 years, you're going to probably remove half of it from your brain. But I think I would have had an even more enjoyable time in my journey to becoming a professional dancer had I known that it's not as black and white as it's sometimes presented to us.
Excellent. Thank you so much on that.
Yeah, and we had a couple follower questions as well. One follower wanted to know how you take care of your body and mind after performing, what your recovery process looks like.
Um, it depends on how the performance goes, to be really honest. On the occasions where I don't feel good about my performance, it was worse when I was younger. I would feel like I wanted to crawl into a hole and never come out. Like, it would even be hard for me to go to work the next day because I was so embarrassed and ashamed, even though it was probably I was the only one who remembered what had happened the night before. But that's how important my job is to me, is I take so much pride in what I do, and I respect the art form so much that if it's not what I want it to be, then it's really difficult for me. Now I kind of, I again have a more mature perspective on it. And even, I mean, actually recently, I had one performance of Theme and Variations at ABT's fall season. And it's a very difficult ballet, like one of the hardest ones. It's extremely technical, but beautiful, so beautiful. And I've done a lot of work over time on my headspace and my mentality, and I'm really good at not getting nervous anymore for anything. Um, and I find that while nerves are great and important and super helpful, and there's a reason why we get nervous and have adrenaline rushes before we do something big, for me, I'm more uncomfortable when I feel that way. So I learned how to just not feel that way before a show. And so same thing with Theme and Variations. I wasn't feeling particularly nervous, but I had just done a run through of it literally 4 hours prior was my tech rehearsal, which was not ideal, but I was still grateful to have the time on stage before. And I made sure to be mindful not to overdo my rehearsal to make me too tired for the show. Because again, it's one of these ones that's like so like you're exhausted I mean, it's like vomit worthy. It's one of those stamina wise. Um, and I remember just like arriving on the stage and feeling not fully invested what I was doing, like not fresh. It was also 9:30 at night. It was the last thing on the program. And I just kind of said to myself, I've been here already today. Like, I already went through these steps, maybe not 100% physically, but emotionally, mentally, because of the rehearsal. And then on top of that, it was coupled with how hard, physically challenging the ballet is. And it just takes from you. So the fact that I mentally wasn't 100% there and also was so drained in the physical aspect, the curtain came down. I could not make eye contact with like any of the staff members who had come on stage to congratulate us on the job we had done. And I said to my partner, I said, do you want to take a quick picture just to obviously remember the performance? We took 2 pictures. He left the dressing room and I cried for like 30 minutes right after the curtain. I literally, the whole experience just was like shot. I just was hysterically crying. I was like taking my hair out, my makeup off, like full, just distraught. And that stuck with me for some time. And then later on in the evening, I got over it. But I kind of was mentally going through the things that didn't go well. And that's an instance of the way I come off of a performance when it doesn't go great. I don't usually cry. I might feel extreme mortification, but in this case, I think the physicality of it made me cry. It just took a lot out of me. Otherwise, after a performance, I usually spend a lot of time with people afterward, anyone who comes to say hi, and also friends and family who come to the show. And I like to talk about it. My coaches, who typically are at almost every performance of mine, will leave me a long voice note about what they liked, what they didn't like. I'm very big on feedback. It doesn't matter to me if it's uh, the next day or the next week. I'm like, I want the feedback right away. I want to know. Um, so I rely on those people to kind of share with me while it's also still fresh in my head. And then it's really hard for me to fall asleep. I usually, after like a Swan Lake or something, I'm going to bed at 1 or 2 in the morning, even though I'm really tired. I can't shut my brain off. So that's sort of my post-performance routine, like, is both analyzing what just happened and also um, trying to relax and fall asleep, which is hard to do.
I can't even imagine. I've been to performances where I'm not performing, I'm watching. And the performance was so moving, though, that I went home and I could not fall asleep because I'm just like, oh, this is so exciting. And it was such a great performance. I'm curious to ask you, I think that's fascinating what you just shared. The feedback from your coaches, does that usually line up with what you felt in your body? And like, for example, this time that you're talking about with theme and variations, like, did the feedback from your coaches fit with how you thought you did that time?
Absolutely. I always agree 100% with them. I always am like, yes, agree, you're right. I couldn't have said it better myself. Like, everything, all the feedback that they have, I totally feel it and respect it and agree with them. Sometimes it's hard for me to put my finger on what I didn't like or what I did like, and because I can't watch myself, and they can sometimes lead me in the direction of what needs to be fixed. Um, that said, they also point out things that they like. Of course, they're like this or that. A lot of times it's your costume, it's your hair, it's your makeup. Like, it's the way your hairline. I mean, literally, it's to that degree, but it makes sense. Again, the ballet is aesthetic. So everything matters. It's not sometimes just the way you walk on stage, depending on how your costume fits you, or the way that the shape of your bun, how it complements or detracts from your own proportions. That's like 60 or 70% of it. And then your dancing kind of follows after. So, it's so important to have those people in your life because it's easy people are so kind and supportive that they'll be like, "Oh, that was amazing. You did this, you did
You were
that. You
so
were so
pretty.
great."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Thank you. Next." Like, moving on. Who's going to tell me, really, despite all that, that's great, but like, I need to know for the next one. And then I write it down as well. So, making notes. Yeah.
I think that's so interesting to hear how much, like, where your bun is placed. And I know so many conversations go into where exactly the tiara goes on your head and how much it changes the way you look. And audiences may think, well, that's stupid. But then they may see the dancer on stage and go, there was something, I don't know, I just didn't like it. I just didn't feel it. So I think audiences really don't understand how much thought and planning goes into where's the bun going, what kind of part, what kind of hair, just for a bun, right? So what do you hope that audiences can understand about the strength and the sacrifice and all that goes into sort of the beauty that they see on stage?
I think it's our job to make it look easy and beautiful. And that's why I love ballet. And that's why why I'm not playing sports. I mean, ballet is just as athletic as your next sport, but it also has that element of it's an art. So while I wish that audiences had more appreciation for how difficult it is, I also feel okay about the fact that they are going to see something beautiful and they might not know exactly what went into it. That's kind of the sacrifice I think that we make as artists in getting to perform for people, do what we love to do. I don't feel pity for us. Like, oh, people don't know how hard it is. Yeah, that is true. They don't. But also, we're there to look a certain way, be beautiful, be artistic, transcend people. And part of that sometimes is not knowing what they're looking at. There's a mystery in the ballet, and there's the mysticism about it. I think that actually adds to the experience.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I love to read, and reading, good writers really move me. I don't want to know if they struggle every day to write or if the words pour out. I don't want to see the crumpled balls of paper. Like, the end product is so magical and transportive for me that's all I need. And I agree that there should be that mystery, because we are trying to create lights, staging, music, costumes, the whole thing for it. And at the same time, we want to make sure people understand how hard dancers work and how they deserve to get paid as athletes. And not just because, they look cute in a tutu, but they deserve to get paid as professionals and working athletes and sort of all of that thing. So I appreciate your comments on that. If you could change one thing about how dancers are educated, like with anatomy and injury and self-care, what would it be? And I'm really interested to hear sort of from the point of view of dancers who peak too soon, right? And what you mentioned earlier about the longevity of a career and how those two might intersect.
Yeah, I feel like another great example of me learning something the hard way. When I had my back injury, I ended up going to see Clarice Marshall, who's a Pilates teacher. She used to be a dancer for Mark Morris, and she helped to rehab me, and now I see her every week for Pilates. When I was 12, 13, 14, 15, and I was going to ABT's summer programs or the ABT school, she would also give us Pilates classes. Like, that's how we'd start the day. And I could not for the life of me understand what was so beneficial about doing heel slide, laying on my back, lifting one knee and putting it down, lifting the other knee and putting it down. If it wasn't physically hard, then how is it benefiting me? And I remember I used to sometimes, because, it's like I was tired anyway from the week, going to school, going to dance. Like, I had 5 hours a day, like, at ballet school. And so I would take those opportunities to lay on my back to actually, like, take a little nap if I could, like, close my eyes. And Clarice, who is the sweetest, would walk by and say, "Oh, Skylar, this exercise is with your eyes open." And, I just could not appreciate what that was doing for me until I got injured. And then all of a sudden, however many years later, 20 years later, I was like, "Clarice, do you remember when I used to take a nap in your class? And now here you are saving me, coming back from an injury. And now I don't know what I would do without you." So it's interesting, because I think it's hard for young dancers to see the benefits of cross training, just as it was difficult for me. Um, young dancers are also pushed very hard. If you see a talented kid, it's all the people around them that want to do, just to push them forward. It's like that thing of a teacher building their own name and reputation off of the raw talents of a student. So I think for parents, it's also really important to be in touch with their children, to say, check in, how are you doing? Take a pulse, make sure that they're happy, make sure that they're not burnt out. I mean, that comes down to that support system that we kind of briefly touched on, but it is so important because it's kind of easy to tell someone to do something, but when you're actually the person doing it, and you also are young and you don't know, you haven't found your voice, and we're in a silent art form, it's scary. It's like a lot of people end up finishing before they've even started.
Mm-hmm.
You see it so often.
Yeah, I see that a lot. And I do mostly privates. And when I'm working with a younger dancer and the parents are worried because they're missing this competition, or they may not make it back for this thing or that nutcracker, whatever, I have to say, I don't want your daughter to peak when she's 14. I want her to peak when she's 45 or 50, right? And so it's seeing that longevity. And the ones who burn super brightly when they're really young um, are the ones who often burn out too soon because they're they're so amazing and cool to look at that people aren't going, let's slow down and just like go slow and easy with it. And you were one of those people that was on the stage at a pretty early age. So I think you're a great example of how it can still be done and still be done well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you used the word talent, Skylar, because I have seen so many people talk about talent when they're looking at a dancer who's really, really hypermobile, but maybe that's, kind of that they're equating the two when we know that, as you've talked about, the artistry and all these other things that are so important, and dance is about movement. And I love what Jen said about the transitions. Like, things happen in the transitions. And Jen and I have quite a few clients in common, that they might look a certain way in Instagram photos and Instagram reels. They can do certain things, but then when it comes to like day to day, they're either in pain or they're having various different problems. I've worked with a dancer who, she was always in the front and center doing the needle and the scorpion, and she had all these Gumby awards, and she was retired at, age 14 or something like that. So it is so challenging because dancers now, they're seeing all this on social media, and they need to hear from people like you more and more that it's not about pushing into your hypermobility. It's, if you have a more hypermobile body, you need to protect it even more. Um, but we've obviously been touching on this quite a bit, but if you were to like synthesize into a handful of sentences, what do you really think that young dancers need to know about, the social media aspects and the hypermobility, because they're getting so much of these messages. There's so many places where they just keep showing more and more of these images, and it's really difficult for them.
I think my message would be keep working on it in a safe way. Like, if you're not the most flexible person, just as I wasn't, keep working on your weaknesses, as we all do, but also like continue to strengthen your strengths. Don't take them for granted. Don't ignore them. Um, Discover what's going to make you different from the next person, and what is going to make you uh, interesting. And, you know, there's a reason why there are multiple principal dancers at any given ballet company. It's because people want to see multiple different interpretations of the same ballet. There'd be a reason that somebody would come back 8 different nights to see 8 different people portray Odette O'Deal in Swan Lake. And those uh, differences in each other, while it's good to take from your classmate and observe and learn from them, also go inward and see what makes you you.
It's beautiful. And if you could tell your younger self something, what would you say?
Hmm. Um, I think I would tell myself that it's not always going to be fair. Things are not always going to be fair. I was very much feeling like, as a student, if I work hard, I perform consistently with consistency, and I, 2 plus 2 equals 4, I'll be rewarded for it, and then blah blah. And that is largely how it works in ballet school. I mean, I was lucky. I was always more or less at the top of my class in ballet school. So I wasn't experiencing a lot of difficulty. I wasn't having to overcome a lot as a child because my teachers appreciated me and gave me chances and nurtured me and fostered what I had to give. But then when you get into a company, all of a sudden you're one of 90. And even if you feel like you're deserving of something, there might be somebody who's in the director's office making a case for themselves as to why they should do something, not to your exclusion, but it ends up perhaps being to your exclusion. And so I think for me, it was like kind of coming to terms with the fact that I might actually have to speak up for myself and push and ask for things and do the thing that is uncomfortable, which is to use our voice to advocate for ourselves, um, is something that I kind of wish I wasn't as naive about when I was younger, because it took me probably 10 years in ABT to actually find the courage to assert myself in a certain way. And then it wasn't until I discovered my own bottom line, which was, okay, you know what? What this information is telling me is maybe you're not going to be a principal dancer here, or maybe you're not going to be a principal dancer here as soon as you want. So what are you, it's my responsibility now to take that information and do something with it. I can't just complain, oh my God, I'm not getting cast, or I'm only doing things because someone gets injured. It's at a certain point, it was up to me to make a decision based on what my circumstances were and to actually take responsibility for myself. And it was that moment that I said, okay, I don't think I'm happy here. I think I want to go somewhere else. I want to be a principal dancer. So if it's not here, I'll do it somewhere else. And that was the moment I was promoted. I'm sure that's something that at the time my director could sense.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great story.
Love that.
So, we've talked at length about the fact that you are not hypermobile, but we would love to hear from you, having observed it from the outside. Would you have any hypermobility hacks for your dancers? And it doesn't even have to be a physical thing. It could be a mental thing as well.
I think the thing that's worked for me, again, is that thing of investing in my body, getting body work done, making the time for it, getting to class at a responsible time that allows me to stretch and prepare my body for what I have to do. Taking class, which it's funny, I spoke to a friend the other day and I said, do you think you could go into a rehearsal day without taking class? And he said, yeah, I could. He's like, would I want to? No. I've never been a person who could just go into rehearsal without taking class. Like, to me, it's just sounds crazy, but some people do it. I think, again, being diligent about how you prepare yourself for your day is important. Finding the things on the outside that work for you and listening to your body, stopping when it seems like you should stop. Speaking up when something seems dangerous, like working with a new choreographer. A lot of people they get their first opportunities working with a choreographer who sees something in them and plucks them out and says, you're going to be the star of my new ballet. It'd be very hard to all of a sudden have enough a character to now say, hey, this lift that you're inventing is really hard on my body.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine what would happen if you don't, again, speak up for yourself. You might end up with a chronic, even a career-ending injury.
Mm-hmm.
I always say to young people, listen, I know it feels like the end of the world to miss a week or a month, or miss your Nutcracker run, or miss a year. But in the context of an entire career, which, God willing, it's could be 20, 30 years long, a year is nothing, What I will say is I also learned something interesting recently from another body worker with whom I just kind of started seeing. And he said to me, when you go into a stretch, he's like, when you start to feel it, it's enough. You can sit in that place before you keep going. And I was like, oh, true. I guess I don't need to go into my widest split the first thing in the morning and tear the inside of my inner thigh muscles. I could go to a certain degree, wait there for a minute. When I feel like I'm ready, go into the next degree. But I think we're impatient. We're late for class. We have a whole number of reasons. We think we should be able to get into a full split first thing, but it might not be true. So I think for me, that's been something that I learned, again, more recently. As your career goes on, you just pick up more and more things that I can sit in a place in my stretch that is not so extreme, and then move, and then let it open, and then keep going. That's, I think, a hack that I'm enjoying as of this moment.
Well, it's a great hack, and I love it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I love it because although you have commented that you're not hypermobile, I'm sure there's some people that are going to say, wait a minute, I've seen her on stage or I've seen her videos, and most professional dancers at your level, including you, have range of motion that is so much more than what the quote unquote average person, you look around at other dancers, and we often compare ourselves to other dancers. I remember I didn't really think I was that hypermobile growing up because there were other dancers who were more hypermobile than I was, but I was still more hypermobile than the average person.
Yeah.
So, well, Skylar, this has been such a fantastic conversation. I've just really loved chatting with you, learning from you, and I know that all the listeners are really going to enjoy it. We want to know where we can find you and where people can learn more about you and come see your performances as well, of course.
Yay. Yes. Well, I do most of my posting on Instagram. So at Skylar Brandt, just my name. It's like usually where I'm most active. Or you can go to my website, which is skylarbrant.com. But think that's it, really.
Well, this was so much fun, and I know you're super busy, so we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. And do you have any parting thoughts before we go?
Yeah, no, thank you both. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Jen. It's been such a pleasure, and I love talking about these things because I think they're important. The last mobility hack I have for people or parting words is don't forget to take time off. That's such an important one. It's obvious. It's obvious to me, maybe not to everyone, but I forgot about it because I'm like, oh yeah, of course, I'm going to take at least a day off. Take days off to heal and recover mentally, physically, emotionally. I think it makes you grow in those periods that you're not in the studio. You're growing too.
Absolutely. That's a great one. Thank you for saying it out loud for everybody. It's always great to talk to you.
That's a perfect one to end on. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, that was such a fantastic conversation with ABT principal dancer Skylar Brandt, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Bendy Bodies podcast with the Hypermobility MD. I have lots of other resources, including my newsletter, The Bendy Bulletin. Check them out on Substack at hypermobilitymd.substack.com. You can help us spread the word about joint hypermobility and connective tissue disorders by leaving a review and sharing the podcast. This really helps raise awareness about these complex conditions. Did you know that I also offer one-on-one support for both clients and healthcare professionals? Whether you're living with a connective tissue disorder or caring for someone who is, I've got your back. Check out my coaching and mentorship options on the services page of my website at hypermobilitymd.com. You can find me, Dr. Linda Bluestein, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, or LinkedIn at HypermobilityMD. You can find Human Content, my producing team, at Human Content Pods on TikTok and Instagram. You can also find full video episodes up every week on YouTube at Bendy Bodies Podcast. As you all know, we love bringing on guests with unique perspectives to share. However, these unscripted discussions do not reflect the views or opinions held by me or the Bendy Bodies team. Although we may share healthcare perspectives on the podcast, no statements shared on Bendy Bodies should be considered medical advice. Please always consult a qualified medical healthcare provider for your own care. To learn about the Bendy Bodies program disclaimer and ethics policy, submission verification and licensing terms, and HIPAA release terms, or to reach out with any questions, please visit bendybodiespodcast.com. Bendy Bodies Podcast is a human content production. Thank you for being a part of our community, and we'll catch you next time on the Bendy Bodies Podcast. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. I love getting your feedback. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you will never miss an update. We've got plenty more exciting content coming your way. And if you're looking for more episodes, just click on one of the videos on the screen right now. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.